Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Hemsworth, and I'm on the Solutions Marketing team here at Slack. Thanks for joining this Frontiers breakout session, Explore Enterprise-Grade Security at Slack. Besides myself, we'll be hearing from Amy Hall, our Head of Customer Trust at Slack, and Aaron Browning, Senior Security Engineer. They'll be providing an overview of Slack's security posture, highlight recent innovations, and give a sneak peek into what we're looking at in the near future. At the tail end of the session, we'll also hear from Larkin Ryder, Director of Software Engineering here at Slack. She'll be joined by David Patton, CIO of Investment Banking and Capital Markets at Credit Suisse. But before we get started, here's the obligatory legal language I need to show you since we'll be discussing roadmap items in today's session. With that, as you probably know, cloud security is more important than ever. With COVID-19, organizations have or are in the process of adopting cloud solutions to keep their teams connected. And last year, we saw several years of digital transformation compressed into mere months. With organizations becoming more entrenched in this digital world and hybrid work looking like it's the de facto model going forward, security is paramount. And cybersecurity threats, including phishing scams and spam, are spiking as bad actors take advantage of remote workforces and the systems that they use. In fact, last year, there was over a 400% increase in ransomware attacks, and they are expensive, with the average payout costing $234,000. So as many of you are shifting to a hybrid work model, you need a secure collaboration solution like Slack to create alignment, increase productivity, and help your organization move work forward. Think of Slack as the virtual HQ that replaces your physical office. It has the features you need, built on a strong foundation of security practices to enable you to secure your collaboration. And with that, I want to pass it over to Amy, our Head of Customer Trust, to dive deeper into our security programs and features.
Thanks, Jeremy. What's exciting and unique about Slack is that we provide an experience users love while still meeting security and compliance requirements. Enterprise-grade security is built into every aspect of how users collaborate and get work done in Slack. We define security through 3 pillars. First, compliance. We meet or exceed some of the most broadly recognized security standards and offer solutions to help you address your compliance requirements. Our security program earns top certifications and attestations while also helping you meet your specific industry regulations. Next, operations. Our dedicated security team uses industry-accepted best practices and frameworks to keep your data safe. We use a defense-in-depth, risk-based security model with controls to manage the physical, technical, and administrative risks of our operating environment. Finally, capabilities. Understanding that every company is different, we provide you with security features for the control, visibility, and flexibility you need. For example, no other enterprise collaboration solution gives you the option to bring your own encryption keys. We will talk about Slack's enterprise key management option a little later in this presentation. Let's dive into each of the 3 pillars in a little more detail. Our security program maintains compliance with ISO 27001, 2717, 2718, SOC 2 Type 2, and SOC 3. We also follow the regulations of the Cloud Security Alliance. Slack also helps you meet specific industry regulations and international security and data privacy standards. These include FINRA, HIPAA, FedRAMP, data residency, and GDPR. We most recently became TSAC certified as well to serve the German automotive market. In May of 2020, Slack achieved the FedRAMP agency authority to operate at the moderate impact level sponsored by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. To support its FedRAMP moderate authorization, Slack maintains compliance with over 300 rigorous security controls. U.S. public sector organizations now have the ability to run more of their workloads using Slack's collaboration platform. So what's next? We're currently performing technical scoping and build out as we work towards achieving a FedRAMP high authorization and ITAR compliance. In continuing with compliance, for organizations who want to store their data at rest in countries or regions outside the US, they now have the option to do so with our data residency capability. Since 2019, we have launched data regions in Germany, France, Japan, Australia, UK, and Canada. Since late last year, EKM support has also become available in these regions. Our dedicated security team uses industry-accepted best practices and frameworks to keep your data safe. And these are some areas I want to highlight here. First, we use encryption at rest and in transit, employing strong cipher suites and appropriate protocols. Next, our network security and server hardening systems are supporting testing and development activities that are hosted in completely separate environments. All servers within our production fleet are hardened in accordance to Center for Internet Security Benchmarks, or CIS. We follow a defined secure software development cycle. This is a robust process leveraging Slack's own open source tool, GoSTM. For administrative access, Slack employs multi-factor authentication for any access to systems by Slack employees, including our product environment. Slack limits access and reviews access lists quarterly. Slack monitors all servers and workstations continuously. We retain and analyze a comprehensive view of the security state of our infrastructure, storing forensic logs in a separate AWS account accessible only to our security personnel. Slack engages independent entities to conduct application level and infrastructure level penetration tests at least annually as well. And now I'll turn it over to Aaron to cover the capabilities we offer our customers to keep their data protected.
Hi, I'm Erin Browning. I'm a senior engineer on Slack's internal security team. Now that we're all working from home, protecting access to your company's resources and equipment is even more critical. Slack has mature mobile device management features. So if an employee loses their phone or laptop, you can log them out of Slack and protect your data. We also provide features that work with EMM, MDM, and MAM solutions. Basically, all the acronyms, we cover them. In our mobile apps, we offer native blocking of jailbroken and rooted devices. We also check client app versions to ensure a minimum version is in use. We have long provided access management controls like two-factor authentication and domain claiming. You can use single sign-on to manage access to Slack, and you can provision users and groups through tools like SCIM. While your team is transitioning between on-prem and virtual offices, Slack allows you to still host Slack on our servers while you maintain full control of your data. As Amy mentioned earlier, we offer a feature called Slack Enterprise Key Management, or EKM, that can give you extra control and visibility over your data. It operates on a zero trust model, which means that Slack EKM lets you manage your own encryption keys for your data. What's unique about EKM, and unlike any other solution on the market, is it's designed to maintain all of Slack's features and performance and allow your administrators to gradually revoke key access, enabling your teams to continue working in Slack throughout changes. While we're on the topic of protecting your data, let's also talk about data loss prevention. We're frequently asked, do you support data loss prevention services? And yes, we do. We have an API that connects with the leading DLP solutions, and this will allow your DLP to scan content within Slack messages and files. Using this, you can help prevent personally identifiable information, such as credit card numbers, from being shared within your Slack workspace. Additionally, we have a new feature that I worked on, so I'm a bit excited to talk about it. Your organization can now set up what we call information barriers inside Slack. These barriers can be configured by Slack admins to prevent specific user groups from messaging or calling other specific user groups. The example we like to use is, let's say you're an investment bank. You can maintain one group in Slack for traders and another group in Slack for investment bankers. These two groups shouldn't talk because, industry regulations. Now in Slack, you can configure it so that they cannot communicate with each other, but they can still collaborate with other members in your organization. This granular control allows your admins and your company to meet rules and regulations without blocking organization-wide collaboration. What if you want to collaborate with external organizations? You can do that with Slack Connect. Slack Connect allows you to move your conversations with partners, suppliers, industry peers, customers, basically anybody, out of email and into Slack. The benefits are big. Faster communication, stronger relationships, use those reacgees, more transparency, and heightened security, because unlike email, which leaves users open to spam and phishing and other malicious attacks, when everybody works in channels, teams receive messages and files only from verified members. No spammers allowed. With Slack Connect, admins can maintain control over their organization's data and monitor external access. And what's more, all of our enterprise-grade features and compliance standards extend to Slack Connect. So that brings us to verified orgs. What are verified orgs? You can now have your company verified. And what that means is it will be confirmed that this workspace belongs to your company. So for example, what if I'm an attacker and I sign up GOOGIE and start sending your users Slack Connect invitations? It might look like Google. However, with verified orgs, you'll know that's not Google. So this will give your admins peace of mind that your users are connecting to trusted partners and not spammers. How you can tell if an organization is verified, the typical Twitter way, look for that little check mark. We talked earlier about Slack Connect. We're continuing to invest here to eliminate phishing scams and spam, while still allowing your team to collaborate and not blocking their work. Now admins can pre-approve connections with organizations they specify. Once an admin has added an organization to your team's pre-approval list, future shared channels can be created with that organization without having to have additional admin approval. If you know you work with Google, you can get Google approved. And then anyone within your organization anyways, can set up a shared channel with Google without having to have that increased burden of work on your admins. So now let's talk about Slack's app ecosystem. Our security program is committed to our app ecosystem. We believe this can be a happy marriage between customizing Slack with apps and protecting the integrity and confidentiality of your data. With app permissions, admins can ensure apps only request and access the minimum amount of information needed, no extras. We recently released new granular tokens that make it even easier to reduce the access an app must request. In our app directory, each app's listings contains security and compliance information shared by the app's developer, so you know which apps will meet your organization's standards. A new section in the app directory will display this information. You can view additional compliance and security information about individual applications. It can be difficult to understand whether or not apps meet your internal organization security and compliance criteria. These fields are complicated. So this information will give your admins and users a summary view, which is provided by the developer of an app's policies, linking out important information for further detail and allowing a more streamlined internal review process. And now I am going to throw it back over to Amy for y'all to hear about our roadmap, what's coming.
Thanks, Erin. Let's move into what we're planning to release in the near future. Customers have asked for the ability to delegate admin tasks to non-admins in order to alleviate burden without granting regular users more power or access than they should have. We recently released 3 system roles to enterprise customers: channel, user, roles, admins. With the release of this new roles and permissions framework, admins have more flexibility with how permissions are delegated across their Slack organization. This reduces admin overhead, increases security, and is just overall easier to manage. We will have additional roles coming in the near future as well as support for non-grid workspaces. The bring your own device approach to workplace technology puts admins and security teams in a tricky spot. Employees prefer to keep personal information private, and admins have an obligation to keep corporate data secure. Although admins don't manage an employee's personal device, they need enough access to wipe sensitive data clean if, say, the employee's personal device is lost or stolen. Fortunately, there are solutions. We currently work with several EMM providers like AirWatch and Mobile Iron. Later this year, Slack will offer support for Microsoft Intune Mobile Application Management, or MAM. Both Intune management and unmanaged devices will be covered. Users will also be able to copy and paste data between Slack and other Intune managed and secured applications. Currently, our customers leverage the Discovery API and the use of e-discovery tools to preserve messages and files. Customers must contact Slack to request a legal hold. In the near future, we'll be rolling out a self-service feature allowing customers to create legal holds through their org dashboard on Enterprise Grid. This feature allows customers to place users on a legal hold, which then holds all messages and files from all conversations the user is in, regardless of the retention policy. Customers can now ensure that all data is saved when necessary to do potential litigation involving a specific user. Now I'm pleased to welcome Larkin Ryder, our Director of Product Security, who will be talking with our special guest, David Patton, CIO of the Investment Banking and Capital Markets from Credit Suisse.
I'm very pleased to welcome our special guest, David Patton, CIO of Investment Banking and Capital Markets from Credit Suisse. Hello, David.
Hi, Larkin. Thank you for having me today. Sorry we couldn't do this in person, I guess. So.
I'm sorry about that in every aspect of my life, but next year we'll plan for it, okay?
Of course, yeah, you bet.
So explain to those who are not familiar with Credit Suisse what the company does.
Sure. So I guess Credit Suisse is a global bank. We offer wealth, investment banking, and financial services. I'm actually part of our IB Capital Markets business. It's actually now, through a recent reorg, called Capital Markets and Advisory. So I head technology, and I'm based in New York. I'm actually at Connecticut at home now, but normally I'd be in the New York office.
And as I'm sure all of us are aware, New York has been doing a great job managing their situation. I'm a little bit jealous. I think California's had some challenges. All of that, of course, is informing the work we're doing every day, the way we're working every day, the fact that we're now distributed. Tell me about your top priorities this year as a CIO.
So I think, really COVID reshaped those priorities in March. I think like for any large enterprise, or bank, the things we were reacting to really started to kind of set a different track in terms of what we wanted to prioritize the rest of the year and go forward. And I think arguably, disrupted some of the traditional approaches to the workforce. I guess the two sort of fronts where we're, now prioritizing is really around that sort of kind of catalyst or that movement into the cloud as part of digital transformation. Then the second, of course, is collaboration itself. And, we're challenged, I think, like with everyone, almost overnight working to a fully remote model, both internally and then, more recently trying to adapt to a new normal with how we operate with our clients as well. So I don't necessarily think it's sort of, reshaped where we're trying to get to. If anything, it's just accelerated what we're seeing as a kind of modern workforce. So again, it's been a very, very dynamic very dynamic few months. And I think, again, with our partnership with Slack, amongst other companies, we're really helping rethink what that workforce looks like and rethink, our approach to public cloud.
Yeah, the acceleration of digital transformation is something I've heard from a lot of Slack customers, of course. But security still has to be top of mind while you're making these kind of big structural changes. I'm interested to know how you work with your own security team to ensure that as you're moving to more cloud services, you're staying secure and compliant.
So I think, whether we host kind of on-prem or, as part of a public cloud service that we own or a SaaS service, we're still operating to the same bar, whether it's data privacy, compliance, and just our general kind of security posture. So those levels are still there. And I think, as we're now accelerating the use of cloud, we're really starting to, look at a lot of these situations case by case. I think what we find is that, a lot of our cloud providers that we work with, the vendors we work with, offer, relatively kind of bespoke ways of ensuring security and presenting their security posture. And of course, depending what the service is, we have a relatively bespoke requirement of what we want that service to do. But I think all in all, we are seeing kind of sort of common requests and, common sort of standards in security. I think, earlier you touched on things like, bring your own key and enterprise key management. I mean, there are things that, really help us, get confidence around the data privacy model and a security model overall.
Yeah, that's something I've heard consistently, especially from financial services. The difficulty in going to the cloud is definitely supported by a bring your own key model. Of course, that's something that Slack has offered for a while now, and I know is quite valuable to our financial services organizations. I'm curious beyond that, though, when you're purchasing cloud software, what are some of the top security requirements vendors need to meet? You mentioned that, you feel like you have some bespoke requirements. This is your chance, tell the vendors out there who aspire to work with you what kinds of things they need to be sure and check the box on.
Sure. Well, I think the kind of the typical range, again, I don't think these are going to be necessarily surprises to folks out there, but if we look at a new SaaS product, I mean, first of all, that kind of level of kind of confidence around the security and compliance really is the opening questions, we have. I think, if we can't get that right, it really does start to challenge using the capability itself. The challenge on top of that, actually, just from my experience, having been on a few attempts over the last few years, is kind of achieving and getting to some of the security standards without actually compromising the capability itself. It's very easy to kind of fully lock down and fully encrypt at rest and put all these, large kind of control measures in place. But if you're starting to compromise the capability, or you're putting onerous complexity around how we would manage that and compromising security elsewhere, then you're sort of losing the reason of why you look at the agility in that SaaS product to start with. I do think, if you were to categorize the themes that we or the lenses we look at this through, I mean, first of all, data privacy and data management is key. Just making sure that we have security to our level and controls around the data and and how that data is managed and kind of who has access to it. I mean, that's probably one of the leading kind of discussions and evaluations we have. The second, again, you mentioned earlier in some of the slides, extending that, if you look at the granularity of information barriers and data management within that. So even within our organization, how do we ensure that we're upholding walls between private and public side and so on. I think you also touched on identity as well. That is not just important for the security efficacy and how we extend identity within our organization, but it's also important to get it right from a convenience perspective. Like, how does that user, when they're on the go on a mobile device, be able to access Slack quickly without putting in, 10 forms of authentication? How do we know the factors of authentication they've got are good enough as well? So, I mean, those are very typical things. And then I think, like we have traditionally, lots of considerations around, data retention and visibility management and just the operational stability of the service itself. So again, I think many of these things, we're seeing a lot of commonality around how they're being tackled. There's obviously nuances between that. And I think even within Credit Suisse, different departments may have different levels of data privacy requirement as well. So it is again, as I said earlier, it's very typically a case by case. But I think, as we are an industry, I think we're becoming more organized around what we're asking for and what we expect from a cloud-based provider.
Yeah, I loved your example of the user on the go needing to be able to access the data directly from their phone. Certainly, the whole point of having a collaboration platform is to enable the ability of your user base, enable them to be more agile, enable them to have a more seamless experience. And as you're pivoting into the cloud and looking for services that provide that capability, a collaboration platform like Slack certainly has to be at the forefront of the ability to do that, because if you can't contact your employees, if your employees can't engage with each other, that becomes a sincere impediment. And somewhat related to that, having that collaboration platform be a focal point for how data is shared across your business, having interconnected applications. I'm curious how that creates security challenges for you. It can be very enabling for the user, but it can create security challenges for the organization, or maybe it's part of the security solution.
Sure. I think first of all, I think when we look at Slack, or just kind of thread-based, channel-based communication in general, it is a different paradigm to traditional email. And I think where you draw the analog or the comparables in terms of security has been, typically one of discussion. But the key thing for us, and again, this is something that you'd highlighted as well, I think being able to manage and maintain and audit, the kind of the flow of activity and correspondence within the platform, and who has access to what. I think, those are really the fundamentals that for internal collaboration that are key to kind of getting comfortable. Now, I think if you look at what, a platform like Slack offers, arguably it almost like levels up some of the control and the distribution management and some of the addresses some of the security challenges you have with traditional email and rights management content and so on. So, I think, when we look at Slack, we see a very strong, opportunity to kind of change that security paradigm, or at least change that kind of control lens, but enhance it compared to some of the traditional tools as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm looking forward to how that collaboration model and that security paradigm will eventually be able to extend beyond the walls of the organization with some of the new features that we're offering. I think people view that as complicating their security model, but having a consistent security model, I think, really benefits teams, and bringing that channel-based communication paradigm to the relationships you have outside your organization. I think you'll get all the benefits of the oversight that you were alluding to earlier.
And I must, just to add, I think we talk about collaboration. I think earlier I referenced collaboration. Out of the gate in March, internal collaboration was a management focus. How do we make the distance working model work? How do we allow our teams to better collaborate? And the second order, or the secondary requirement that came shortly after that, was extending that into external partners and clients and so on. And the difference there is, of course, you start to see demand coming in where we're being asked to join into communities or conversations that are over Slack. And so I think, as you mentioned, something like Slack Connect really does help sort of start to extrapolate that into external conversation as well. And as we know, we're currently exploring that at Credit Suisse also. But that does present an opportunity, not just as a new thing to have, but a new way to kind of operate and converse with our external parties as well.
Wow. Thank you so much for those insights, David. I think we are going to have to leave it there. I wish we had so much more time to talk, but as you said, hopefully next year we'll be able to do it face to face. Thank you again for your time and insights.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again, Larkin and David. What a great Q&A session they had. We appreciate your time today, and thank you for joining this session.